Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstead and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstead, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers, here to talk Seahawks football. As per the norm, we are here to preview the Buffalo Bills game coming up on Sunday. Got a lot of information for you related to this game, related to the roster. Lots of moves, a big trade. It's a big week. Coming off a win, Seattle is looking definitely to build off of that. And it looks like momentum's in their favor. So should be a good game. Looking forward to talking about it and all the other things. Welcome in, Keith.
Yeah, well, we should probably start with the other things because there's a lot of other things before we get to the game. Seattle made a ton of roster moves this last week, including kind of a blockbuster trade. But we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay. Yeah, let's start with the least informative news all the way to the end. So Seahawks placed Stone Forsythe on IR. Something happened there. Kid looked like it was going to be, 3-4 weeks for him to get healthy at least. And so they went ahead and put him on IR. Considering how Gerald played last game, they felt a little bit more comfortable doing that, along with the big moves that we've been waiting for a while. George Fant tackles George Fant and Abe Lucas designated for return. They can practice now. They've got a 21-day window to be activated onto the 53. So that indicates to me that at least Abe Lucas will be available no later than after the bye, which is tremendous news for the team. And then George Fant, they're actually trying to get him ready to go this week. Not sure. He's a limited participant in practice over the last 2 practices, and we'll have to see how he does coming out of today and into tomorrow. And if I had to bet, I would say another week, and we'll wait and see.
Well, they do have an open roster spot just sitting there because they waived Tayakota, who they brought up onto the 53 last week. And they have not replaced him. He's just literally sitting, or that the roster spot is sitting there. I think it is to activate Fant. I don't have anything.
It's either Fant or it's going to be Jarek Reed, because Jarek Reed was designated to return to practice a week and a half ago. He has been a full participant in practices now for 3 or 4 practices, including the last 2 this week, and so he appears to be ready.
That would make sense too, because it's the same position.
Yeah. So, and then as expected, I believe that Tayakota will end up back on the practice squad when all is said and done.
Yep.
There's a few other things, but I think in the flow of the conversation, we can talk about those things, mostly due with the injury report that came out today. But I want to talk about this trade, Keith, because this is big news for me, and shows the team's real commitment to just kind of continuing to improve and looking for ways to improve throughout the season, and not just being satisfied or waiting to the offseason to address some of these issues. So the Seahawks trade linebacker Jerome Baker and a 2025 4th-round pick for inside linebacker Ernest Jones IV. Jones was originally drafted from to the Los Angeles Rams, if everyone remembers that. He was a 3rd-round pick for them in 2021. Played 3 seasons with them, and then during training camp, he was traded to the Titans, and lasted 7 games with them, and then Seattle went ahead and made that trade as the Titans became sellers in a seller's market as their season is kind of coming to a close early.
Yeah.
And this is a huge move for Seattle because Jerome Baker just really didn't turn out the way I think that the team envisioned him working into a role at middle linebacker. And I think they saw that the team lacked some physicality, lacked sure tackling, lacked the ability to work through traffic and take on blocks and shed, and just a physical, imposing player that Ernest Jones seems to be a better fit for Mike Macdonald in this defense.
If you look at his stats from a year ago with the Rams, he had a monster season with 145 tackles, 14 tackles for loss. Like, this guy's
4.5 sacks.
He's a beast as a middle linebacker. And Baker's never been that in his career. He's been steady, but he's never been like, he was never going to make a Pro Bowl. Like, that's not really he's not that level.
Especially after injuries. He just is a step slow and not physical.
And, Jones doesn't have that problem. He is, he's a
downhill player.
He's only 24. He plays really fast. He's a tackling machine. Honestly, he's one of the best run stopping middle linebackers in the game right now. And that's why Seattle went and made this trade. Yeah, giving up a fourth round pick is a little steep, especially on a guy that's, his contract is coming to an end at the end of the season, but he is a major upgrade over Baker. And that's going to really help the middle of that defense, which they've needed help. Like the group of the two middle linebackers and strong safety, that's been the weakness of the defense, that trio. Jenkins is on our IR now. They've moved some people around to try and see if that can get better at safety. And now they've made this one where Baker is gone and Jones is in as the new starter. And that is an upgrade. I think Seattle this was a big move to fix a defense that needed fixing.
It's a big move for a young player still on a rookie contract. He's in the last year of his rookie deal. And you mentioned it. Seattle is only one of 4 teams in the NFL right now that have allowed 1,000 yards rushing against them on the season. They allowed 5.0 yards per carry, 5th in the league, in a bad way. And they needed to address that, and they went out and did. Now, you combine that with the move, I think, for Connor Williams at center. You wish you kind of addressed those positions in the true off season in free agency and so forth, but better late than never. And say what you want about Schneider, but he's never shied away from moving on quickly from a deal that's not panning out. They don't sit in those bad moves very long. And this really showed their commitment to winning this year.
The Rams would not have traded Jones to Seattle. I think that's safe to say, right? You're not going to make your division rivals stronger. So they didn't. They traded him to the Titans, and then the Seahawks went and got him from the Titans. I believe that if they could have made that trade before the season started and had that in place all year and had Jones there, they would have. But you're not going to make your division rival better. So it's a matter of waiting for the right guy to become available. And this is the right guy. This reminds me so much of when McDonald was the defensive coordinator in Baltimore. His first season as a defensive coordinator there, Roquan Smith became available from the Bears, and they went and got him. And suddenly that defense was tremendous. And it made a big difference because they needed that other guy. They had Patrick Queen, but you need 2 guys in the middle there. Queen's more of kind of the off guy. That in this defense, it'll be Dotson, right? They didn't have that big time Thumper on the strong side of the, it's an inside linebacker, but it's on the strong side of the ball. They didn't have that guy. And so they went and got Roquan Smith, and it mattered. It mattered a lot to that defense. And this feels exactly like that. They didn't have that guy. They went and got him.
Yes.
And now they do.
Yeah. I feel a lot better about the whole situation. I really do. I mean, as soon as this was announced, I texted you, and the reaction is like, wow, this is a big deal, because it does make a defense when you have key players at key spots that really solidify weaknesses. And this does that, and adds a dimension of physicality to this team that could use more.
Mm-hmm.
You've got some inside players like Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy starting to come on as a player that you might look at as being a tone setter. You've got maybe Derek Hall coming on in a similar fashion that way. And then that's about it. You've got Devin Witherspoon in the back end. Tariq Woolen's going to be a little physical just because of his size. But really beyond that, Julian Love isn't known for being a physical player, although he does his job. Kayvon Wallace has been, hit and miss in that department. Kobe Bryant's always been sort of a thumper when he gets a chance to play, and caused 4 forced fumbles in his rookie season. Hasn't had one since, but there's always that possibility. So I really like the move as far as just adding a dog to the defense. In fact, that's the way that Ernest Jones described himself in his press conference today. He says, I'm a dog, and I want to be here for the long term. So I think conversations have probably already been had about making sure this guy's in the fold next year, because you don't want to really give up a 4th round pick. It's a similar situation that we had with Williams last year. Leonard Williams, where you trade a 2nd round pick for a guy in an expiring contract, and you're wanting to make sure that you're going to retain that player. So it puts Seattle in a slight disadvantage. We do have some cap space that was generated in that trade, a couple $1 million. So now we're up to about 13 million of overall cap space, with about 8.5 in real cap money to be able to extend if we wanted to. Now, I think personally it would be a slight advantage for Seattle to extend right now or sometime in the season, because what's going to happen is if we get to right before free agency, it's going to be similar to the Leonard Williams deal, where it's you don't want to set the market for a player like Ernest Jones. Now, Ernest Jones is fringy Pro Bowl level, or right there at Pro Bowl.
Fringy. He's a Pro Bowl.
Well, you know what I mean? He hasn't made one yet. So I'm just saying
he should have made it last year.
Right
the fact
there.
that he's saying he didn't make the Pro Bowl last year is absurd. His level of play last year was.
I agree. He had 144 tackles and 14 tackles for loss. I mean, that's a huge stat line for any player.
Yeah, he had a monster year. And there were guys that had significantly weaker years but have a bigger name that made it to the Pro Bowl. And that's he's a Pro Bowler. He's a Pro Bowl talent. Absolutely.
Yes, I agree. And so, you don't want to get into a situation, though, where you're setting the market for a player like Ernest Jones. For me, we've already gone through this discussion, and we've already gone through the modification on contracts on the team before Ernest Jones arrived. Now you're going to go back to paying linebackers, on this roster. You have to decide. Now, Ernest, I think they can make something work with an extension. Plus he's on his rookie deal. You kind of figure a way around that, and the first couple of years of that contract can be definitely to the Seahawks' advantage and in structure. And so
they have the cap room now. Like that. If they extend him now, then the first chunk of the cap hit isn't part of this season, not next season. And so they can basically take what would be next year's cap hit of this new deal and spread it out over 2 years, this year and next year, and really give them some flexibility going forward with that contract.
I agree. So here's the deal. Just quickly, we've got a lot of contracts coming up next year where you're going to want to retain players. So now you've added Ernest Jones to that pile. You've got Geno Smith potentially that you're going to want to adjust or redo that deal. I'm just saying potentially. Ken Walker's going to be up for an extension potentially. You're going to have to make a decision on DK Metcalf potentially. You're going to want to figure out maybe Charles Cross, but you could go another year on Charles Cross. You're going to want to figure out Connor Williams, the offensive center, who's just on a 1-year deal. And that's not even any of the defense. So there's a lot of players and we're already up against the cap. So if you take a look at cap space 2025, before we even get started, we're even or we're underwater slightly. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting. Now they always figure it out. I'm just saying there's a lot of players that you want to re-sign with not a lot of money currently.
Well, you look at what the names that you listed, like Geno Smith is on there because you want to figure that out, but he's got another year on his contract. It's just stupidly expensive. And so figuring out him, whether it be to move on or to extend him, either way, you're freeing cap space up. So when you figure that out, it gets better. You know, Tyler Lockett is in a situation where he's probably in his last year with Seattle, just from a cost standpoint. And
unless he really takes a step back on salary.
Yeah. And then Dre Jones is another one who's in his waning days of as a Seahawk. So I mean, it's going to be there's going to be some change. There really is. But overall, like they're in a pretty good position. They've got talent. Now they've just got to massage the cap enough to keep guys like Connor Williams and Ernest Jones. And if they can do that, this team's going to be set up to do real well next year.
Talk to me a little bit now about the offensive line and what George Fant and Abe Lucas coming back means to this team going forward.
Well, it's about stability. You've got Cross, who's playing well on one side. You've got Connor Williams, who is a Pro Bowl talent in the center. That's the end of the list of guys that you can build around so far. And, you know, George Fant's not a Pro Bowler, but he's steady and he's he's a massive upgrade over Stone Forsythe. So if they can get him back, if not this week, then the following week, like that's actually an improvement. Jarrell played incredibly well this last game with Forsythe out. And so I'm a little, it's not going to be, I kind of want to see him play until Abe Lucas is ready, but I understand why the team wouldn't, especially against a team like Buffalo. That's going to be tough.
We haven't even talked about Buffalo yet, but Gregory Rousseau might have something to say to Michael Jarrell. Yeah.
And so getting Fant in there is probably an improvement. So, but overall, I mean, you're basically getting an upgrade at right tackle, and you're stabilizing. So you the two bookends and center are in good shape, and when Lucas gets back, it's even better shape. And now you've just got the two guard spots, and playing guard is easier when you have talent on both sides of you. And so the hope then would be that Bradford Haynes at right tackle, whichever one of them is in the game at that moment, would play better and have it easier because they've got a guy like Abe Lucas beside them on one side and Connor Williams on the other. So there's a lot less thinking and a lot more just doing. And so it'll make life easier. We'll get more out of that position. That's the hope. And so it's amazing what a little bit of stability will do. I mean, just look at this last game against Atlanta, like a little bit of stability on the offensive line because Jarrell came in and provided a boost over Stone Forsythe. Suddenly you could run to the right again. and the offense worked really well. It was nice, a nice game for the team.
You got to take it. You got to take it with just a little grain of salt. I mean, the Atlanta Falcons present one of the least effective defensive lines in all of the NFL.
Sure.
And
I mean, they're so dependent on Grady Jarrett, who's like 800 years old, that that's.
I can't believe you just said that. It seems like we've only been talking about him for a couple of years, and here it is. I think he's the year 10 or something like that.
Oh no, he's like, you're like 14.
No way.
I remember wanting the Seahawks to go sign him when his rookie deal was up, and that was in like 2014. That was like 10 years ago.
Oh my God, I gotta look this up now.
But yeah, I mean, they're in a better spot. I don't want to say they're in a great spot because the guards are still bad, but they're in a better spot today than they were yesterday. And a lot of that has to do with, we know that coming out of the bye, Abe Lucas is probably going to be the starter again. He will be back. And that is a huge lift.
That's crazy. I mean, really, like I'm gonna see if I can open up this. So after the bye, the Seahawks play the 49ers, November 17th.
Mm-hmm.
So all we need to do is make it through the Bills game and the Rams game, and we have Abe Lucas back, barring any setbacks. And then from there, we play 8 games. So that's a real nice on-ramp to getting into the playoffs for Abe Lucas. And and then we've got George Fant in his proper role, which is primary backup. And George, potentially, if pressed, could come in and cover for a player like Tomlinson.
Yeah, I would like to see. I mean, at some point, the team's got to figure out how to get their best 5 on the field. And if George Fant is one of those guys, I'm okay with them trying him at guard instead of Tomlinson. I have not seen enough from Tomlinson to make me think that he should be out there, other than the fact that there's no one behind him on the depth chart. Like there's no one worthwhile. So if that's the case, well, you got to play him. But if they can get a guy like Fant and be like, hey, let's get him in there because he's one of our best 5 guys, I'm willing to see what it looks like.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Okay, so as far as the and we'll get to the Bills here in half a second. As far as the practice report, injury report is concerned, you've got George Fant and Abe Lucas in limited participation the last 2 practices, no setbacks. Reek Woolen had an ankle limited participation today. That's better than, actually he was a limited participant yesterday as well. Improvement wise, we've got Julian Love back, Brady Russell, Boye Mafe, and Jarek Reed, all full participants in practice. Good news for Jarek Reed. Looks like he might be coming back.
Yeah.
Okay, so Buffalo, Sean McDermott brings his crew to Lumen Field. Josh Allen's the big player here at quarterback. 63% of his passes are completed, which is, about 5 or 6 points lower than Geno Smith, but he's amazingly efficient at it. He's thrown for 1,483 yards, 12 touchdowns, 0 interceptions this season. Very accurate. When Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis left this offseason, kind of left a big hole in their offense. I thought they've done okay. They've only lost to Baltimore and Houston this season, but they went and picked up Amari Cooper from the Cleveland Browns in a trade. Guy shows up, scores a touchdown in his first outing. They've got rookie Keon Coleman, which I really like, kind of stretches the field. Khalil Shakir is another possession-style wide receiver for them that can move the chains. Last game against the Titans, they had a combined 15 receptions, 256 yards, and a touchdown. And then In addition to that, you add Dalton Kincaid, their tight end, their running backs can receive out of the backfield. James Cook and Ray Davis both can carry the ball really well as well. So that's their offense. It smokes. I mean, it's a top 3, top 4 offense in this league. I would say that Allen's at least a top 3 quarterback right now, playing really well. And this team's 5-2. And then on the defensive side, Keith, they kind of are led by Gregory Rousseau, their former first-round draft pick. They've got a guy on the other side, Epineza, who's kind of their rock, their edge setter defensive end. So it's a really nice tandem for them. It's kind of like Boye Mafe and Derek Hall for us. And they do really well. And it's going to be interesting to watch that matchup if Gerald goes again at right tackle against Gregory Rousseau, because that's who he's going to be facing. So give me your perspective overall, Keith, about what you see in this game, what you like about the Bills, where Seattle can find success against them and hopefully put together a win.
Well, I mean, you look at, what's going on with the Bills, and the reputation for the Bills is that Josh Allen has to do everything, but then he turns the ball over a lot. And that's not the case, because he has not thrown an interception this year. At offense, the Bills passing, he's got 12 touchdowns and no interceptions, which means he's not living up to that reputation of being a turnover machine. Instead, he's just out there, playing ball, and he's so hard to tackle. He's a guy that, you can have him dead to rights for a sack, and then he'll just shrug you off. And that's hard. So the guy's got to play, the Seahawks have to play very disciplined on that defensive line. You can't run past him. You've got to pinch in, you've got to keep him in front of you. Because if you lose your integrity of your pass rush lane, he'll just run on you, and he's really hard to bring down. And you throw in the fact that on top of that, he's throwing the ball really well this year. Like I said, no interceptions. It's a tall task to stop this offense. Now, I know they traded for Amari Cooper. I'm not as high and have never been as high on Amari Cooper as other people. I mean, he's a good player. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I don't think he's a world beater. I also don't believe that their other receivers are tremendously talented. I think they have great stats because they have got a great quarterback getting them the ball. I think that's been the weakness. I mean, with Diggs gone there's a reason why they had to go trade for Cooper. It was not because, they had an opportunity to get better, and so they got better. No, they needed to improve the wide receiver group. So I'm not huge on that group. I just think that it all starts and finishes with Josh Allen. And if you can't get pressure on him without running past him, without giving him running lanes, he's gonna hurt you. He really is gonna hurt you. Yeah. So that's the task.
Yeah, it's a big task. I mean, I think that, Seattle, the best way forward against this team is going to be having a well-balanced attack that's executed well. So you're going to want to be able to run the ball against their defense. Mm-hmm. And all of what I'm saying is to basically try to keep Buffalo's offense off the field. So you're going to want to try to run the ball effectively with Ken Walker. You're going to want to shorten the field. You're going to want to convert on third downs. You're going to capitalize on your red zone opportunities. You're going to move the chains, even if it's incrementally, because throwing over the top against the Bills is a little challenging, but it can be done. And if DK Metcalf is not out there, it may change your game plan a little bit as far as how Seattle wants to execute and kind of march down the field as opposed to taking big chunks out of the field. And that kind of helps with their time clock management as well and keeping that Bills offense off the field. So I would imagine they really want to run the ball effectively against the Bills if they can. And if they do, I think this game is in reach. And I think what you need to do if you're Seattle is you just need to keep scoring. You've got to score with the Bills. You've got to try to outscore them. You've got to limit their opportunities on offense. Maybe have a turnover. I know that Josh Allen hasn't thrown a pick yet, but last year he threw 13. Mm-hmm. So if you can press him a little bit, I think you can get some mistakes out of there. Primarily, they're going to want to stop the run. I think Ernest Jones helps us do that right away. So I like him playing right away. I see him probably playing 90% of the snaps, like in his first game. They're just going to throw him out there because they don't really have a choice.
Yeah, and the Titans' defense is similar enough to Seattle's that I think they're going to be able to just get him up to speed and yes. get him out there and see what happens. I think it's going to be that's not going to be a problem. I was
Titans defensive coordinator Denard Wilson worked with Seahawks coach Mike McDonald in Baltimore, so they do speak the same language and run the similar defense there. So Ernest Jones is going to be up to speed.
I will say in this game, if the Seahawks give Ken Walker 9 touches or hell even 14 touches, I'm going to be so angry at Ryan Grubb because Buffalo's run defense on a yards per carry basis is worse than Seattle's. Seattle gives up 5 yards per carry. Bills get up 5.1.
And Bills are particularly vulnerable out of the shotgun when you hand the ball off. So yeah. I think the Bills allow 3.8 yards per carry under center on handoffs, and out of the shotgun, they average, I think it's 5.8 or something like that. Yards
and the Seahawks run the ball out of shotgun a lot. So it's not like you're pulling something out that you don't do and you don't do well. You've got to run the football. You've got to grind out some drives and keep your defense on the sideline. Let them stay fresh to get after Josh Allen, because Josh Allen's he's a hard quarterback to play against. And if he's out there on the field the whole time and Seattle's defense is chasing him around, they're not going to win this game. You've got to be able to put some drives together. So
they also need some pass protection. Geno's going to have to throw the ball. Last game, Rousseau had 11 total pressures on 42 snaps, half sack, 6 quarterback hits. Epinesa had 3 tackles, a tackle for a loss, a sack, 1 forced fumble. Then you've got Dwayne Smoot, Daquan Jones, Ed Oliver's in there. Dwayne Carter, their rookie, is playing well. So their defensive line is pretty formidable. It's definitely going to be better than Atlanta. Mm-hmm. I would say it's on par with like Denver. Like if I was to pick one that Seattle's played already that kind of is in that realm now.
Actually, they're similar defenses. The Broncos lead the league in defensive yards per attempt at only 5.9, which is crazy. The Bills are at 6.4, half a yard more per pass, but that's good enough for 6th in the league. I mean, that's an impressive stat line for them. So yeah, I mean, it's, and just for comparison, Seattle's at 7. So, yeah, I mean, they're the one thing that you look at the Bills, they've got, they've given up 9 touchdowns and they have 7 interceptions. Like they do a good job of getting to the ball and making plays on it. So,
well, Geno Smith's been pressured 40% of his dropbacks this year, 4th highest rate in the league, but a relatively low sack rate at 11th least sacked quarterback overall. And he's completing 68.5% of his passes under that much pressure. Geno's been playing really well. And so I'm not terribly concerned with the pass rush. It hasn't been a difference maker in any game yet so far against Seattle. Maybe forcing Geno off his mark and throwing into coverage and a couple of interceptions. But I do like Geno and the offense in this game, the opportunities. I think it's going to come down to, can we generate any turnovers on this offense? I mean, Allen's been really keeping the ball out of the defense's hands, and they do a good enough job running the ball to where you're just not generating turnovers against them. And so I do think that that's going to be one of the keys to the game is, can we get a turnover out of this and give our offense another opportunity and take the ball out of their hands? Because I think it's going to be a close game. I really do. I think this is going to be one of those games you look at the end of the year, and if we can win, it's going to be one of those marquee wins, because I think the Bills come into town, they're confident, they're 5-2. They've got a real opportunity in the AFC other than Kansas City to kind of be there in the at the end in the AFC Championship game. And that's kind of where, that's their standard. That's where they want to be. And Seattle really could use this game as momentum heading into the Rams game. You get that game, you get to the bye, you've got your record's really nice. You go into that 49er game in Santa Clara, and you could really do some damage in this division if you can get this.
If you can get this one. This is a rough one. This is a tough game. This is a very good team. Now I know that Seattle's 4-3, they're 5-2. It's only one game difference. But they're really good 5-2. And I just look at this game and I'm like, I'm not ready to say that they have to get this one or anything like that. I think that this is a game, they dropped this game, and sure, they dropped to 4-4. That's 500 halfway through the season, but they have an opportunity to make a run after the bye. They got to get past that San Francisco game, and then there's some winnable games there, and they can make a run. And so I think that you're going to be, like I said, even if they don't get this game, I want them to be competitive. Give us some hope that this team's going to come together and give us a fun stretch run, which I think they will. There's so much talent going on this team. There's a lot going for them, and they're getting Abe Lucas back, and I can't tell you how much that excites me. That
getting healthy, and they've got a couple new players on the defense. I mean, we didn't even really talk about what's the kid's name? Harris. Roy Robertson Harris on the defensive line. I mean, there's an impact player right there as well.
Yeah, he had a good game in his first game with the Seahawks, and he's a rotational defensive tackle and a guy that is there to help make the other guys better by being good enough to give them a rest. And they haven't had that. They needed that, and he made a couple of really big plays, but also played more than you're used to seeing the backups do, which kept Williams and those guys fresher.
I like the chances of our defense against this Bills team for a couple of reasons. They've got some really nice scouting opportunities from Ernest Jones, having played them this last game. He can kind of really shed some insight there.
He's preparing to play the same team again that he just played. He's going to be
and you don't see that very often in the NFL.
That's got to be a really weird stat where that's not happened very many times. Where a guy he changed teams, so he played against the same team twice in a row. Yeah,
he mentioned that he hasn't done that before in any point in his his life. But he mentioned Christian McCaffrey as a player he thought that happened to before when the Rams played Christian McCaffrey 2 times in a row, once with the previous team, the Panthers,
Carolina,
and then with San Francisco the next week. And so that's an interesting stat. The key one for me with Mike Macdonald is that the Bills lost to the Baltimore Ravens this season already. And Mike Macdonald is very familiar with that defense and all the players on it. And so he's going to have some really nice insight as to how they played the Bills and what was working for them and what didn't. So that's a little something too. Okay, prediction time. How you feeling, man? Are you feeling optimistic, or are you feeling curmudgeon like you sometimes do?
Me curmudgeon? Never. Oh wait, I mean always. No, I'm not going to curmudgeon out on this one, but at the same time, I'm not feeling optimistic. I think this game's going to be close. I think it's going to be tight. I don't know if Seattle pulls this one out in the end. Josh Allen might just be too much down the stretch, but I think it's going to be tight. I'm leaning 27-24 Bills.
I get that. I do. I'm seeing it the same way, Keith. I think it's a coin flip for me as far as which way this game can go. The only thing that gives me pause in Seattle's favor is the thing I just mentioned about Mike McDonald having a little insight into what his Baltimore defense was able to do against the Bills and be successful. And that Ernest Jones factor coming in, I think that really does improve things like right away for this defense. And I think they come in with a little bit of confidence. They were able to generate some turnovers in this last game, and it had been a minute. I think they want to kind of build on that. I think the offense comes in super excited. I don't know what the status of DK Metcalf is in this game, and that could be a factor. If he plays, I like their chances. I don't think that he plays if he has anything going on in his knee. And so we'll see if he does.
He hasn't practiced either of the two practices so far. There's one left. They said that he's trying to get back, which typically means he's not going to make it. If he does play, I don't think he's going to be a big factor in this game. They're going to basically trying to limit the potential for injury on his knee. They're going to have him run in a lot of straight lines. I wouldn't
have him play then. I would, if it's going to be like that, Keith, it's either he's 100% and he can do anything, no limitations, or I don't want him to play, because that would be silly to throw a player out there that can't really is like 85%. That would be malpractice, I think.
See, if you go out there with him and basically you give him Jake Bobo snaps.
Yeah, I know, and you have he's such a competitor, dude.
And you have him stretch the field, and pull the safeties back and that kind of stuff. Like, you have to account for him, even if he's at 85%, because he's so fast and so big.
If he doesn't play, I see an expanded role for Jackson Smith and Jigba stretching the field.
I would agree with that.
He's got that capability in him, but he's only averaging like 8.5 yards per attempt this season route run.
Well, yeah, he's being used a lot underneath in space.
But he's shown before that he can get out into space and really punish defensive backs, especially if he's left on an island. Yeah. Do you think Jake Bobo comes in and gets those third wide receiver reps?
They're split between him and Laviska Shenault.
I agree. I think I've heard some good things about Shenault in practice, and that he's earning reps. There's just not enough balls to go around. Yeah. But if DK were to take the day off, I think Shenault does come in and get opportunities and kind of showcases what he's all about there.
He's just a very different kind of receiver. He's like a weapon. He's try and get him the ball in space and let him, make people miss type of guy.
Who was that possession wide receiver from the 49ers back in the day, like 10 years ago? I used to love that guy. I can't remember. I don't know. Anyway,
not sure who you're talking about.
Yeah, but he used to, he'd be good for 6-7 receptions for 80 yards and a touchdown quite often, and move the chains and so forth. I think Laviska Shenault could really be a factor in picking up third down conversions and moving the chains when the team really needs it the most. Right now, I think they focus on Tyler Lockett to do that and Jigba. But if those guys are going to be looking to stretch the field and get double teamed, I look for a guy like Shenault to be able to come in and have more opportunity.
Well, I'd like to see them, have George Fant in there more. If DK is not going to play, get Fant some more balls. He's just a different type of player that requires a different kind of coverage. And so you can put pressure on a defense by getting him down the seam and that kind of stuff.
So I didn't give my prediction. So here it goes. I see them scoring at least as many points as you predicted. And I'm going to go in a slightly different direction. I'm going to go Seattle by 3 points. So I'm going to go 30-27 Seattle. I think the points are going to be like scored in this game. As hard as the defenses are going to play, I think the offenses, both offenses, are going to be on fire. I really do. I mean, I think their offense is legit. I think ours is kind of coming into its own, and we'll see what happens. I think it could go either way. I really do. I'm going to predict the Seahawks because you predicted the Bills, but I think it could go either way, and I really want to win. I think it would really. I think this win would make up for that Giants loss.
Absolutely.
That's where I'm at with that.
Yep. I had the team after this game being 4-4.
Yeah,
I think you had them at 5-2.
I know. I was ridiculous. I think I was ridiculous. I had them at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then this was a loss. So I had them at 5-3 after this game. Right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I did, but I predicted this as being a loss, but I predicted that Giants game as a win. So yeah, I would love to see him win and get back on track. Have 2 in a row going into that Rams game. Rams at home. Anything can happen in those games. The Rams aren't as good this year, and I think this is the year where we finally beat them. But that's another story, another week, another podcast. But anyway, let's get out of here, Keith. Enjoy the game, everybody. Let's come back and talk about this thing on Sunday or Monday. And you can find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is Seahawks Playbook Podcast on your favorite podcast platform and our own YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button, leave us a comment, all that good stuff. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk. Keith is at Myers NFL. And the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.